Welcome back to Goodnight Stories. My name is Lyra, and I will be your guide into whatever book we decide to read tonight. From young readers to young adult novels, my hope is to give you a comfortable space to listen to a story while you work or doze, whatever brings you joy. So, sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea. Tonight I have an orange Rubio. Tonight we'll jump back into Erin Hunter's Into the Wild. By the following morning, a thin drizzle soaked the treetops and dripped down into the camp. Firepaw woke up feeling damp. It had been an uncomfortable night. He stood up and shook himself vigorously, fluffing out his fur. Then he left the apprentice's den and trotted across the clearing to Yellowfang's nest. Yellowfang was just stirring. She lifted her head and squinted at Firepaw as he approached. My bones ache this morning. Has it been raining all night? Since just after moon high, Firepaw replied. He reached out and prodded her mossy nest cautiously. Your bedding is soaking wet. Why don't you move nearer to the nursery? It's more sheltered there. What? And be kept awake all night by those mewling kits? I'd rather get wet. Yellowfang growled. Firepaw watched her circle stiffly on her mossy bed. Then at least let me fetch you some dry bedding, he offered, keen to drop the subject of kits if it upset the old she-cat so much. Thank you, Firepaw, replied Yellowfang quietly, settling down again. Firepaw felt stunned. He wondered if Yellowfang was feeling all right. It was the first time she had thanked him for anything, and the first time she had not called him kitty pet. Well, don't just stand there like a startled squirrel. Go and fetch some moss, she snapped. Firepaw's whiskers twitched in amusement. This was more like the Yellowfang he was used to. He nodded and sprinted off. He almost crashed into Speckletail in the middle of the clearing. This was the queen who had watched Yellowfang's angry outburst at the tabby kit the day before. Sorry, Speckletail, Firepaw mewed. Are you on your way to see Yellowfang? What would I want with that unnatural creature? Replied Speckletail crossly. Actually, it's you I was looking for. Bluestar wants to see you. Firepaw hurried toward the high rock in Bluestar's den. Bluestar was sitting outside, her head bobbing rhythmically as she licked the gray fur below her throat. She paused when she noticed Firepaw. How is Yellowfang today? She meowed. Her bedding is wet, so I was going to fetch her more. Firepaw replied. I'll ask one of the queens to see to that. Bluestar gave her chest another lick, and then eyed Firepaw carefully. Is she fit enough to hunt for herself yet? She asked. I don't think so, Firepaw meowed. But she can walk well enough now. I see, meowed Bluestar. She looked thoughtfully for a moment. It's time for you to return to your training, Firepaw, but you'll need to work hard to make up for the time you have lost. Oh, great. Thank you, Bluestar, Firepaw stammered. You will go out with Tigerclaw, Greypaw, and Ravenpaw this morning, Bluestar continued. I've asked Tigerclaw to assess the warrior skills of all of our apprentices. Don't worry about Yellowfang. I'll make sure someone sees to her while you are gone. Firepaw nodded. Now, join your companions, Bluestar ordered. I expect they're waiting for you. Thank you, Bluestar, Firepaw mewed. He turned with a flick of his tail and darted towards his den. Bluestar was right. Greypaw and Ravenpaw were both waiting for him by their favorite tree stump. Greypaw looked stiff and uncomfortable, but his long fur clumped by the dampness of the air. Ravenpaw was pacing around the tree stump, lost in thought, the white tip of his tail twitching. "So you're joining us today," Greypaw called as Firepaw approached. "Some day, huh?" He shook himself roughly to get rid of the clinging wetness. "Yes, Bluestar told me that Tigerclaw is going to assess us today. Are Sandpaw and Dustpaw coming too?" Storm and Darkstripe took them out on warrior patrol. I suppose Tigerclaw is going to look at them later, Greypaw answered. "Come on, we should get going," urged Ravenpaw. He had stopped pacing and now hovered beside them anxiously. "Fine by me," mewed Greypaw. "Hopefully some exercise will warm me up a bit." The three cats trotted through the gorse track and out of the camp. They hurried to the sandy hollow. Tigerclaw had not arrived, so they hung around in the shelter of a pine tree, their fur fluffed up against the chill. "Are you worried about the assessment?" Firepaw asked Ravenpaw, as the young cat padded backward and forward with quick, nervous paw steps. "There's no need to be. You're Tigerclaw's apprentice, after all. When he reports back to Bluestar, he's going to want to tell her how good you are." "I can never tell with Tigerclaw," mewed Ravenpaw, still pacing. "For goodness sake, sit down," Greypaw grumbled. "At this rate, you'll be worn out before we begin." By the time Tigerclaw arrived, the sky had changed. The clouds looked less like thick gray fur and more like the soft white balls of down that queens use to line the nests of their newborns. Blue skies couldn't be far behind, but the breeze that brought the softer clouds carried a fresh chill. Tigerclaw greeted them briskly, launched straight into the exercise detailed. "Lyra and I have spent the last few weeks trying to teach you how to hunt decently," he meowed. "Today you'll have a chance to show me how much you have learned. Each of you will take a different route and hunt as much prey as possible, and whatever you catch will be added to the supplies in the camp." The three apprentices looked at one another, nervous and excited. Firepaw felt his heart begin to beat faster at the prospect of a challenge. "Ravenpaw, you will follow the trail beyond the Great Sycamore, as far as the Snake Rocks. That should be easy enough for your pitiful skills. You, Greypaw," Tigerclaw continued, "will take the route along the stream as far as the Thunder Path." "Great," mewed Greypaw. "Wet paws for me." Tigerclaw's stare silenced him. "And finally, you, Firepaw. What a shame your great mentor couldn't be here today to witness your performance for herself. You shall take the route through the tall pines, past the tree-cut place to the woods beyond." Firepaw nodded, frantically tracing the route in his head. "And remember," Tigerclaw finished, fixing them all with his pale-eyed stare, "I shall be watching you." Ravenpaw was the first to sprint away toward the Snake Rocks. Tigerclaw took a different track into the woods, leaving Greypaw and Firepaw alone in the hollow, trying to guess who Tigerclaw would follow first. "I don't know why he thinks Snake Rocks is an easy route," mewed Greypaw. "The place is crawling with adders. Birds and mice stay away from there because there are so many snakes. Ravenpaw will have to spend his whole time trying not to get bitten," Firepaw agreed. "Oh, he'll be okay," mewed Greypaw. "Not even an adder would be fast enough to catch Ravenpaw at the moment. He's so jumpy. I'd better get going. See you back here later on. Good luck." Greypaw raced off toward the stream. Firepaw paused to sniff the air, then bounded up the side of the hollow and began to head for the tall pines. It felt strange to be going in this direction, toward the two-leg place he had been raised in. Cautiously, Firepaw crossed the narrow path into the pine forest. He looked through the straight rows of trees across the flat forest floor, alert for the sight and scent of prey. A movement caught his eye. It was a mouse, scrabbling through the pine needles. Remembering his first lesson, Firepaw dropped into the stalking position, keeping his weight on his haunches, his paws light on the ground. The technique worked perfectly. The mouse didn't detect Firepaw until his final leap. He caught it with one paw and killed it swiftly. Then he buried it, so that he could pick it up on his return journey. Firepaw traveled a little farther into the tall pines. The ground here was deeply rutted by the tracks of the huge two-legged monster that tore down the trees. Firepaw took a deep breath, his mouth open. The monster's acid breath had not touched the air here for a while. Firepaw followed the deep tracks, jumping across the ruts. They were half filled with rain, which made him feel thirsty. He was tempted to stop and take a few mouthfuls, but he hesitated. One lap of that muddy trench water and he'd taste the monster's foul-smelling tracks for days. He decided to wait. Perhaps there would be a rainwater puddle beyond the tall pines. He hurried onward through the trees and crossed the two-leg path on the far boundary. He was back amid the thick undergrowth of oak woods. He moved onward until he found a puddle and lapped up a few mouthfuls of fresh water. Firepaw's fur began to prickle with some extra awareness. He recognized sounds and scents familiar from his old watching place on the fence post, and he knew instantly where he was. These were the woods that bordered the two-leg place. He must be very close to his own old home now. Ahead, Firepaw could smell two legs and hear their voices, loud and raucous like crows. It was a group of young two-legs playing in the woods. Firepaw crouched and peered ahead through the ferns. The sounds were distant enough to be safe. He changed direction, skirting the noise, making sure he was not seen. Firepaw stayed alert and watchful, but not just for two legs. Tiger Claw might be somewhere nearby, he thought. He heard a twig snap in the bushes behind him. He sniffed the air, but smelled nothing new. Was he being watched now, he wondered? Out of the corner of his eye, Firepaw sensed movement. At first he thought it was Tiger Claw's dark brown fur, but then he saw a flash of white. He stopped, crouched, and inhaled deeply. The smell was unfamiliar. It was a cat, but not a ThunderClan cat. Firepaw felt his fur bristle with the instincts of a clan warrior. He would have to chase the intruder out of ThunderClan territory. Firepaw watched the creature moving through the undergrowth. He could see its outline clearly as it skittered between the ferns. Firepaw waited for it to wander nearer. He crouched lower, his tail waving back and forth in slow rhythm. As the black and white cat neared, Firepaw rocked his haunches from side to side as he prepared to spring. One more heartbeat, then he leaped. The black and white cat jumped into the air, terrified, and raced away through the trees. Firepaw gave chase. It's a kitty pet, he thought, as he raced through the undergrowth, smelling its fear scent. In my territory. He was closing in rapidly on the fleeing animal. It had slowed its headlong rush, preparing to scramble up the wide, mossy trunk of a fallen tree. With the blood roaring in his ears, Firepaw leapt onto its back in a single bound. Firepaw could feel the cat struggling beneath him as he gripped on with his claws. It let out a desperate and terrified yell. Firepaw released his grip and backed away. The black and white cat cringed at the foot of the fallen tree, trembling, and looked up at him. Firepaw lifted his nose, feeling a ripple of disgust at the intruder's easy surrender. This soft, plump house cat, with its round eyes and narrow face, looked very different from the lean, broad-headed cats Firepaw lived with now. And yet something about this cat seemed familiar. Firepaw stared harder. He sniffed, drawing in the other cat's scent. I don't recognize the smell at all, he thought, searching his memory. Then it came to him. Smudge? He meowed out loud. How do you know my name? Stammered Smudge, still crouching. It's me, Firepaw meowed. The house cat looked confused. We were kittens together. I lived in the garden next to you, Firepaw insisted. Rusty? Mewed Smudge in disbelief. Is that you? Did you find the wildcats again? Or are you living with new housefolk? You must be. If you're still alive. I'm called Firepaw now, Firepaw meowed. He relaxed his shoulders and let his fur fall flat in a sleek orange pelt. Smudge relaxed too, with his ears pricked up. Firepaw, he echoed, amused. Well, Firepaw, it looks like your new housefolk don't feed you enough. You certainly weren't this scrawny last time we met. I don't need two legs to feed me, Firepaw replied. I've got a whole forest of food to eat. 2 legs. Housefolk, that's what the clans call them. Smudge looked bewildered for a second. Then his expression changed to one of complete astonishment. You mean you're really living with the wildcats? Yes, Firepaw paused. You know, you smell different. Unfamiliar. Unfamiliar? Smudge echoed. He sniffed. I suppose you're used to the smell of those wildcats now. Firepaw shook his head as if to clear his mind. But we were kittens together. I should know your smell like I know the smell of my birth mother. Then Firepaw remembered Smudge had passed 6 moons. No wonder he looked so soft and fat and smelled so strange. You've been to the cutter, he gasped. I mean the vet. Smudge shrugged his plump black shoulders. So, he mewed. Firepaw was speechless. So Bluestar was right. Come on, then. What's it like living wild? Smudge demanded. Is it as good as you thought it'd be? Firepaw thought for a moment about last night, sleeping in a damp den. He thought about mouse bile and clearing away Yellowfang's dirt and trying to please both Lionheart and Tigerclaw at once during training. He remembered the teasing he suffered about his kitty pet blood. Then he remembered the thrill of his first catch, of charging through the forest in pursuit of a squirrel, and of warm evenings beneath the stars, sharing tongues with his friends. I know who I am now, he meowed simply. Smudge tipped his head to one side and stared at Firepaw, clearly confused. I should be getting home, he mewed. Mealtime soon. Go carefully, Smudge. Firepaw leaned forward and gave his old friend an affectionate lick between the ears. Smudge nuzzled him in return. And stay alert. There may be another cat in the area who's not as fond of kitty pets. House cats, as I am. Smudge's ears flicked nervously at these words. He looked around cautiously and leapt up onto the trunk of a fallen tree. Goodbye, Rusty, he mewed. I'll tell everyone at home that you're okay. Bye, Smudge, meowed Firepaw. Enjoy your meal. He watched the white tip of Smudge's tail disappear over the edge of the tree. In the distance, he could hear the rattle of dry food being shaken and a 2-legged voice calling. Firepaw turned, his tail high, and started back towards his own home, sniffing the air as he went. I'll find a finch or 2 here, he decided, then I'll catch something else on the way back through the pines. He felt bursting with energy after meeting Smudge and realizing just how lucky he was to live in the clan. He looked up at the branches above him and began to stalk silently across the forest floor, every sense alert. Now he just needed to impress Bluestar and Tigerclaw and the day would be perfect. Chapter 11. Firepaw returned with his chaffinch gripped firmly between his teeth. He dropped it in front of Tigerclaw, who stood waiting in the hollow. You're the first one back, meowed the warrior. Yeah, but I got loads more prey to fetch, Firepaw mewed quickly. I buried it back. I know exactly what you did. Tigerclaw growled. I've been watching you. A swish of bushes announced Greypaw's return. He was carrying a small squirrel in his mouth, which he dropped beside Firepaw's chaffinch. Ugh, he spat. Squirrels are too furry. I'll be picking hairs on my teeth all evening. Tigerclaw paid no attention to Greypaw's grumbling. Ravenpaw's late, he observed. We'll give him a bit longer and then return to camp. But what if he's been bitten by an adder? Firepaw protested. Then it's his own fault, Tigerclaw replied coldly. There's no room for fools in ThunderClan. They waited in silence. Greypaw and Firepaw exchanged glances, worried about Ravenpaw. Tigerclaw sat motionless, apparently lost in his own thoughts. Firepaw was the first to scent Ravenpaw's arrival. He jumped to his paws as the black cat leapt into the clearing, looking unusually pleased with himself. Dangling from his mouth was the long, diamond-patterned body of an adder. Ravenpaw, are you okay? Firepaw called. Hey, meowed Greypaw, rushing forward to admire Ravenpaw's catch. Did that bite you? I was too quick for it, Ravenpaw purred loudly. Then he caught Tigerclaw's eyes and fell silent. Tigerclaw fixed all 3 excited apprentices with a cold stare. Come on, he said shortly. Let's collect the rest of your prey and get back to camp. Firepaw and Greypaw and Ravenpaw entered the camp, strolling behind Tigerclaw. Their impressive day's catch hung from their mouths, although Ravenpaw kept tripping over his dead snake. As they emerged from the gorse into the camp, A group of young kits scrambled out of the nursery to watch them pass. "Look," Firepaw heard one of them say. "Apprentice is just back from hunting." He recognized the little tabby Yellowfang had hissed at the day before. Sitting next to him was a fluffy gray kit, no more than 2 moons old. A tiny black kit and a small tortoiseshell stood beside him. "Isn't that the kitty pet, Firepaw?" squeaked the gray kit. "Yeah, look at his orange fur," mewed the black one. "They say he's a good hunter," the tortoiseshell added. "He looks a bit like Lionheart. Do you suppose he's as good as him?" "I can't wait to start my training," mewed the tabby. "I'm going to be the best warrior ThunderClan has ever seen." Firepaw lifted his chin, feeling proud at the kit's admiring comments. He followed his 2 friends into the center of the clearing. "An adder!" Greypaw mewed again as the apprentices dropped their catch for the other cats to share. "What shall I do with it?" asked Ravenpaw, sniffing the snake's long body as it lay beside the heap. "Can you eat adders?" asked Greypaw. "Trust you to think with your stomach," Firepaw joked, butting Greypaw with his head. "Well, I wouldn't want to eat it," murmured Ravenpaw. "I mean, my mouth tastes pretty foul after carrying it back." "Let's put it on the tree stump then," suggested Greypaw, "so that Dustpaw and Sandpaw can see it when they get back." They each carried a piece of their fresh kill and the adder back to their den. Greypaw carefully placed the adder on the stump, arranging the snake so that it could be seen clearly from all sides. Then they ate. When they had finished, they sat close together to groom one another and talk. "I wonder who Bluestar will choose to go to the gathering," Firepaw meowed. "It'll be full moon tomorrow." "Sandpaw and Dustpaw have been twice already," replied Greypaw. "Perhaps Bluestar would choose one of us this time," mewed Firepaw. "After all, we've been training for almost 3 moons now." "But Sandpaw and Dustpaw are still the eldest apprentices," Ravenpaw pointed out. Firepaw nodded. "And this gathering will be an important one. It'll be the first time the clans have met since WindClan disappeared. No cat knows what ShadowClan is going to say about it." Tigerclaw's low meow interrupted them. "You were right, youngster." The warrior had strolled up to them unnoticed. "By the way, Firepaw," he added smoothly, "Bluestar wants to see you." Firepaw looked up, startled. Why would Bluestar want to see him? "Now, if you can spare the time," Tigerclaw meowed. Firepaw jumped up immediately and bounded off across the clearing toward Bluestar's den. Bluestar was sitting outside, her tail flicking restlessly back and forth. When she saw Firepaw, she stood up and looked steadily down at him. "Tigerclaw has told me that he saw you talking with a cat from the two-leg place today," she meowed quietly. "But," Firepaw began, "he said that you began by fighting with this cat, but ended up sharing tongues with it." "That's true," Firepaw admitted, feeling his fur prickle defensively. "But he was an old friend. We grew up together." He paused and swallowed. "When I was a kitty pet." Bluestar looked at him for a long moment. "Do you miss your old life, Firepaw?" she asked. "Think carefully now." "No." How could Bluestar think that? Firepaw wondered. His head was spinning. What was Bluestar trying to make him say? "Do you wish to leave the clan?" "Of course not." Firepaw was shocked by her question. Bluestar didn't seem to hear the passion in his answer. She shook her head, looking suddenly old and tired. "I won't judge you if you leave us, Firepaw. Perhaps I expected too much of you. Perhaps my judgment has been clouded by the clan's need for new warriors." Panic swept through Firepaw at the thought of leaving the clan forever. "But my place is here. This is my home," he protested. "I need more than that, Firepaw. I need to be able to trust in your loyalty to ThunderClan, especially now that it looks like ShadowClan is planning an attack. We don't have room for anyone who isn't sure whether their heart lies in the past or the present." Firepaw took a deep breath and chose his next words carefully. "When I saw Smudge today, that's the house cat Tigerclaw saw me talking with, I saw what life would have been like if I had stayed with the 2 legs. I felt happy that I had not stayed. I was proud I left." He held Bluestar's gaze without flinching. "Meeting Smudge made me certain I made the right decision. I could never have been satisfied with the soft life of a kitty pet." Bluestar looked closely at him for a moment, her eyes narrow. Then she nodded. "Very well," she said. "I believe you." Firepaw dipped his head respectfully and let out a silent sigh of relief. I spoke to Yellowfang earlier, meowed Bluestar in a lighter tone. She thinks a lot of you. She's a wise old she-cat, you know, and I suspect she wasn't always bad-tempered. Indeed, I think that I could grow to like her. Firepaw felt an unexpected glow of pleasure at these words. Maybe, in caring for Yellowfang, his admiration for her had grown into affection. Despite the she-cat's ill temper. Whatever the reason, he was glad Bluestar liked her too. But there is something about her that I don't trust, Bluestar went on quietly. She will stay with ThunderClan for now, but remain as a prisoner. The queens will care for her. You must concentrate on your training. Firepaw nodded and waited to be dismissed, but Bluestar hadn't finished. Firepaw, although you showed bad judgment today in talking to a house cat, Tigerclaw was impressed by your hunting skills. In fact, he reported that you all did well. I am pleased with your progress. You will come to the gathering, all three of you. Firepaw could hardly stand still. His body tingled with excitement. The gathering? What about Sandpaw and Dustpaw? He mewed. They will remain behind and guard the camp, replied Bluestar. Now you may go. She flicked her long tail to show he was dismissed, and returned to her grooming. Greypaw and Ravenpaw looked stunned to see Firepaw bounding happily towards them. They had been waiting nervously for him beside the tree stump. Firepaw sat down and looked at his friends. Well, Greypaw demanded, what did she say? Tigerclaw told us you'd been sharing tongues with a kitty pet this morning, burst out Ravenpaw. Are you in trouble? No, although Bluestar wasn't pleased, Firepaw admitted ruefully. She thought I might want to leave ThunderClan. Don't, do you? Asked Ravenpaw. Of course he doesn't, mewed Greypaw. Firepaw gave his gray friend an affectionate swipe. Yeah, you'd hate that. You need me to catch mice for you. All you can catch these days are hairy old squirrels. Greypaw dodged out of the way of Firepaw's blow and reared up on his back legs to retaliate. You'll never guess what else she said, Firepaw went on. He was too excited to waste time play fighting. Greypaw immediately dropped back down on all fours. What? He asked. We're going to the gathering. Greypaw let out a yowl of delight and bounded up onto the tree stump. One of his back paws knocked the adder flying. It hit Ravenpaw in the head and wrapped itself around his neck. Ravenpaw spat with alarm and surprise and then turned on Greypaw. Watch it, he hissed crossly. He shook the adder onto the ground. Scared it might try to bite you? Firepaw teased. He crouched down, hissing, and sidled up to Ravenpaw. Ravenpaw twitched his whiskers and retorted, It's some snake you'd make. He leapt onto Firepaw and rolled him easily onto his back. Greypaw reached down from the tree stump and gave Ravenpaw's tail a tug. As Ravenpaw turned to thump Greypaw with a soft forepaw, Firepaw jumped to his feet and leapt into them both, sending Greypaw flying from the stump. All three cats tumbled into the dirt and tussled on the ground. Finally, they fell apart and settled themselves, panting beside the tree stump. Are Sandpaw and Dustpaw coming too? Puffed Greypaw. Nope, Firepaw replied, unable to disguise the note of triumph in his voice. They have to stay behind to guard the camp. Oh, let me tell them, begged Greypaw. I can't wait to see the looks on their faces. Me neither, Firepaw agreed. I can't believe we're going instead of them, especially after Tigerclaw saw me with Smudge today. That was just bad luck, answered Greypaw. We all caught a load of prey in the assessment. That must be what decided it. I wonder what the gathering will be like, mused Ravenpaw. It'll be fantastic, Greypaw replied confidently. I bet all the great warriors will be there. Clawface, Stonefur. But Firepaw wasn't listening anymore. Instead, he found himself thinking about Tigerclaw and Smudge. Greypaw was right. It was bad luck that the great warrior had been observing him when he had met his old friend. Why couldn't he have been watching Greypaw or Ravenpaw instead? In fact, it was bad luck that Tigerclaw had sent him so near to the two-legged place at all. Suddenly a dark thought entered Firepaw's mind. Why had Tigerclaw sent him so near to his old haunts? Had he wanted to test him? Could it be the great dark warrior didn't trust his loyalty to ThunderClan? Chapter 12. Firepaw peered over the brow of a bush-covered slope. Greypaw and Ravenpaw crouched beside him. Next to them, a group of ThunderClan elders, queens, and warriors waited in the undergrowth for Bluestar to give the signal. Firepaw had not been to this place since his first journey with Lionheart and Tigerclaw. The steep-sided glade looked different now. The rich greenness of the woods had been bleached away by the cold light of the full moon, and the leaves on the trees glowed silver. At the bottom stood the large oaks that marked where the corner of each clan's territory touched the other three. The air was thick with the warm scents of cats from the other clans. Firepaw could see them quite clearly in the moonlight, moving about below in the grassy clearing that lay between the four oaks. In the center of the clearing, a large, jagged rock rose from the forest floor like a broken tooth. "Look at all those cats down there," hissed Ravenpaw under his breath. "There's Crooked Star," Greypaw hissed back, "River Clan's leader." "Where?" meowed Firepaw, nudging Greypaw impatiently. "That light-colored tabby beside the great rock." Firepaw followed Greypaw's nod and saw a huge Tom, even bigger than Lionheart, sitting at the center of the clearing. His striped coat shone pale in the moonlight. Even from the distance, his old face showed the signs of a harsh life, and his mouth looked twisted, as if it had once been broken and had healed badly. "Hey," mewed Greypaw, "did you see Sandpaw spit when I told her I hoped she had a nice evening at home?" "You bet," Firepaw purred. Ravenpaw interrupted them with a muffled growl. "Look! There's Broken Star, Shadow Clan's leader," he hissed. Firepaw looked down at the dark brown tabby. His fur was unusually long, and his face was broad and flattened. There was a stillness in the way he sat and stared around him that made Firepaw's fur prickle uncomfortably. "He looks pretty nasty," Firepaw murmured. "Yeah," agreed Greypaw. "He certainly got a reputation among all the clans for not suffering fools gladly. And he's not been leader for that long. 4 moons ever since his father, Ragged Star, died." "What does the leader of Wind Clan look like?" Firepaw asked. "Tall Star? I've never seen him, but I know he's black and white with a very long tail," answered Greypaw. "Can you see him now?" asked Ravenpaw. Greypaw peered down, searching the crowd of cats below. "Nope." "Can you scent any Wind Clan cats?" Firepaw asked. Greypaw shook his head. "No." Lionheart's meow sounded softly beside them. "The Wind Clan cats may just be late." "But what if they don't turn up at all?" mewed Greypaw. "Hush. We must all be patient. These are difficult times. Now keep quiet. Bluestar will give the signal to move soon." Lionheart meowed quietly. As he spoke, Bluestar stood and, holding her tail high, flicked it from one side to the other. Firepaw's heart missed a beat as the ThunderClan cats rose as one and bounded through the bushes, down toward the meeting place. He raced alongside them, feeling the wind rushing in his ears, and his paws tingled with anticipation. ThunderClan cats paused instinctively on the edge of the clearing, outside the boundary of the oaks. Bluestar sniffed the air, then she nodded, and the troop moved forward into the clearing. Firepaw felt thrilled. The other cats looked even more impressive close up, milling about the great rock. A large white warrior strode past. Firepaw and Ravenpaw looked at him in awe. "Look at his paws," Ravenpaw murmured. Firepaw looked down and realized the huge paws of this great Tom were jet black. "It must be Blackfoot," mewed Greypaw, "Shadow Clan's new deputy." Blackfoot stalked over to Broken Star and sat beside him. The Shadow Clan leader acknowledged him with a twitch of one ear, but said nothing. "When does the meeting begin?" Ravenpaw asked Whitestorm. "Be patient, Ravenpaw," he answered. "The sky is clear tonight, so we have plenty of time." Lionheart leaned over and added, "We warriors like to spend a little time boasting about our victories while the elders swap tales of the ancient days before the Two-Legs came here." All 3 apprentices looked up at him and saw his whiskers twitch mischievously. Dappletail, One-Eye, and Small-Ear headed straight off toward a group of elderly cats who were settling themselves below one of the oak trees. Whitestorm and Lionheart strolled over to another pair of warriors, whom Firepaw did not know. He sniffed the air and recognized their scent as River Clan. Blue Star's voice sounded behind the three apprentices. "Don't waste any of your time tonight," she warned. "This is a good opportunity to meet your enemies, listen to them, remember what they look like, and how they behave. There is a great deal to be learned from these meetings." "And say little," warned Tigerclaw. "Don't give anything away that might be used against us once the moon has waned." "Don't worry, we won't," Firepaw promised hastily, looking into Tigerclaw's eyes. The feeling that Tigerclaw didn't trust his loyalty lingered with him still. The two warriors nodded and moved on, and the apprentices were left alone. They looked at each other. "What do we do now?" Firepaw asked. "What they said," replied Ravenpaw. "Listen." "And don't say too much," Greypaw added. Firepaw nodded gravely. "I'm going to see where Tigerclaw went," he mewed. "Well, I'm going to find Lionheart," mewed Greypaw. "You coming, Ravenpaw?" "No thanks," Ravenpaw replied. "I'm going to find some of the other apprentices." "Okay, we'll meet up later," mewed Firepaw, and he trotted in the direction Tigerclaw had taken. He scented Tigerclaw easily and found him sitting at the center of a group of huge warriors behind the great rock. Tigerclaw was speaking. It was a tale Firepaw had heard many times at camp. Tigerclaw was describing his recent battle against the River Clan hunting party. "I wrestled like a lion cat. 3 warriors tried to hold me, but I threw them off. I fought them until 2 lay knocked out and the other had run off into the forest like a kit crying for its mother." This time Tigerclaw didn't mention killing Oakheart in vengeance for Redtail's death. Perhaps it's so he doesn't offend the River Clan warriors, Firepaw decided. Firepaw listened politely to the end of the story, but a familiar scent was distracting him. As soon as Tigerclaw had finished speaking, Firepaw turned and crept away toward the sweet smell, which was coming from a group of cats nearby. He found Greypaw sitting amongst these cats, but that was not the scent he had been following. Sitting opposite Greypaw, between 2 River Clan toms, was Spotted Leaf. Firepaw glanced at her shyly and settled himself beside his friend. "Still no scent of Wind Clan?" he mewed to Greypaw. "The meeting hasn't begun yet. They may still come," replied his friend. "Look, there's Running Nose. He's the new Shadow Clan medicine cat, apparently." He nodded towards a small gray and white cat at the center of the group. "I can see why they all call him Running Nose," Firepaw remarked. The medicine cat's nose was wet at the tip and encrusted around the edges. "Yep," replied Greypaw with a scornful growl. "I can't see why they appointed him when he can't even cure his own cold." Running Nose was telling the cats about a herb that medicine cats had used in the old days to cure kitten cough. Since the 2 legs came and filled the place with hard earth and strange flowers, he complained in a high-pitched yowl, "the herb has disappeared and kittens died needlessly in cold weather." The cats gathered around him, yelled their disapproval. "It never would have happened in the time of great clan cats," growled a Black River Clan queen. "Indeed," mewed a Silver Tabby, "the great cats would have killed any 2 legs that dared enter their territory. If Tiger Clan roamed this forest still, 2 legs would not have built this far into our land." Then Firepaw heard Spotted Leaf's quiet mew. "If Tiger Clan still roamed these forests, we would hardly have made our territory here either." "What's Tiger Clan?" mewed a small voice behind them. Firepaw noticed a little tabby apprentice from one of the other clans sitting beside him. "Tiger Clan is one of the great cat clans that used to roam the forest," Greypaw explained quietly. "Tiger Clan is cats of the night, big as horses with jet black stripes. Then there is Lion Clan. Greypaw hesitated, frowning as he tried to remember. "Oh, I've heard of them," mewed the tabby. "They were as big as Tiger Clan cats, with yellow fur and golden manes like rays of the sun." Greypaw nodded, and then there's the other one, Spotty Clan or something like that. "I suspect you're thinking of Leopard Clan, young Greypaw," meowed a voice from behind them. "Lionheart." Greypaw greeted his mentor with an affectionate touch of the nose. Lionheart shook his head in mock despair. "Don't you youngsters know your history? Leopard Clan are the swiftest cats, huge and golden, spotted with black paw prints. You can thank Leopard Clan for the speed and hunting skills you now possess. Thank them? Why? Asked the tabby. Lionheart gazed down at the little apprentice and answered, There is a trace of all the great cats in every cat today. We would not be night hunters without our Tiger Clan ancestors, and our love of the sun's warmth comes from Lion Clan. He paused. You're a Shadow Clan apprentice, aren't you? How many moons are you? The tabby stared awkwardly down at the ground. 6. He stammered, not meeting Lionheart's eyes. Rather small for 6 moons, Lionheart murmured. His tone was gentle, but his gaze was searching and serious. My mother was small too, answered the tabby nervously. He bowed his head and backed away, disappearing into the crowd of cats with a twitch of his light brown tail. Lionheart turned to Firepaw and Greypaw. Well, he might be small, but at least he was curious. If only you two showed as much interest in the stories your elders tell. Sorry, Lionheart, Firepaw and Greypaw exchanging doubtful glances. Lionheart grunted good-naturally. Oh, go away, the pair of you. Next time I hope Bluestar decides to bring apprentices who appreciate what they hear. And with a half-hearted growl, he chased them away from the group. Come on, purred Greypaw as they leapt away. Let's see where Ravenpaw's gotten to. Ravenpaw was in the middle of a group of apprentices who were clamoring for him to tell them about the battle with RiverClan. Go on, Ravenpaw, tell us what happened, called a pretty black and white she-cat. Ravenpaw shyly shuffled his paws and shook his head. Come on, Ravenpaw, insisted another. Ravenpaw looked around and saw Firepaw and Greypaw at the edge of the crowd. Firepaw nodded encouragingly. Ravenpaw flicked his tail in acknowledgement and began his story. He stumbled a bit at first, but as he continued, the tremor disappeared from his voice, and his audience leaned in, their eyes growing wider. Fur was flying everywhere. Blood spattered the leaves of the bramble bushes, bright red against green. I'd just fought off a huge warrior and sent him squealing into the bushes when the ground shook and I heard a warrior scream. It was Oakheart. Redtail raced past me, his mouth dripping blood and his fur torn. Oakheart is dead, he howled. Then he rushed off to help Tiger Claw as he fought another warrior. Who would have thought Ravenpaw was such a good storyteller? Greypaw murmured to Firepaw, sounding impressed. But Firepaw was thinking of something else. What was it Ravenpaw had said? That Redtail had killed Oakheart? But according to Tiger Claw, Oakheart had killed Redtail, and he, Tiger Claw, had killed Oakheart in revenge. If Redtail killed Oakheart, who killed Redtail? Firepaw hissed to Greypaw. If who did what? Greypaw echoed absent-mindedly. He was only half listening. To Firepaw. Firepaw shook his head to clear it. Ravenpaw must have mistaken. He thought he must have meant Tiger Claw. Ravenpaw was coming to the end of his story. Finally, Redtail dragged the wailing cat off Tiger Claw by his tail, and with the strength of the whole of Tiger Clan flung him into the bushes. A moving shadow caught Firepaw's eyes. He glanced around and saw Tiger Claw standing a short distance away. The warrior was watching Ravenpaw with an iron stare. Unaware of his mentor's presence, Ravenpaw continued to answer question after question from his enthusiastic audience. What were Oakheart's dying words? Is it true that Oakheart had never lost a battle before? Ravenpaw replied promptly, with his voice high and clear and his eyes shining, but when Firepaw glanced back at Tiger Claw, he saw a look of horror and then fury creep over the warrior's face. Clearly, Tiger Claw wasn't enjoying Ravenpaw's story at all. Firepaw was just about to say something to Greypaw when a loud yowl signaled for all the cats to fall quiet. Firepaw couldn't help feeling relieved as Ravenpaw fell silent at last, and Tiger Claw turned away. Firepaw looked up to see where the yowl had come from. 3 cats sat silhouetted against the moonlit sky on top of the great rock. They were Bluestar, Broken Star, and Crooked Star. The clan leaders were about to begin the meeting, but where was the Wind Clan leader? Surely they won't start the meeting without Tall Star, Firepaw hissed under his breath. I don't know, Greypaw murmured back. Haven't you noticed? There isn't a single Wind Clan cat here, whispered a River Clan apprentice on the other side of Firepaw. Firepaw guessed that similar conversations were going on all around him as the other cats were gathering beneath the great rock. An unsettled murmuring rumbled in their throats. We can't start yet, yelled one voice above the noise. Where are the Wind Clan representatives? We must wait until all the clans are present. On top of the rock, Blue Star stepped forward. Her gray fur glowed almost white in the moonlight. Cats of all clans, welcome, she meowed in a clear voice. It is true that Wind Clan is not present, but Broken Star wishes to speak anyway. Broken Star padded noiselessly up to stand beside Blue Star. He surveyed the crowd for a few moments, his orange eyes burning. Then he took a deep breath and began. Friends, I come to speak to you tonight about the needs of Shadow Clan. But he was interrupted by raised, impatient voices from below. Where is Tall Star? Cried one. Where are the Wind Clan warriors? Yelled another. Broken Star stretched up to his full height and lashed his tail from side to side. As the leader of Shadow Clan, it is my right to address you here, he growled in a voice full of menace. The crowd fell into an uneasy silence. All around him, Firepaw could smell the acrid tang of fear. Broken Star yelled again. We all know that the hard time of Leaf Bear and late New Leaf have left us with little prey in our hunting grounds. But we also know that Wind Clan, River Clan, and Thunder Clan lost many kits in the freezing weather that came so late this season. Shadow Clan did not lose those kits. We are hardened to the cold north wind. Our kits are stronger than yours from the moment they are born, and so we find ourselves with many mouths to feed and too little prey to feed them. The crowd, still silent, listened anxiously. The needs of Shadow Clan are simple. In order to survive, we must increase our hunting territory. That is why I insist that you all allow Shadow Clan warriors to hunt in your territories. A shocked but muted growl rippled through the crowd. Share our hunting grounds? Called the outraged voice of Tiger Claw. It is unprecedented, cried a tortoiseshell queen from River Clan. The clans have never shared hunting rights. Should Shadow Clan be punished because our kits thrive? Yelled Broken Star from the great rock. Do you want us to watch our young starve? You must share what you have with us. Must, spat Small Ear furiously from the back of the crowd. Must, repeated Broken Star. Wind Clan failed to understand this. In the end, we were forced to drive them out of their territory. Snarls of outrage burst from the crowd, but Broken Star's caterwaul rang loud above them all. And, if we have to, we will drive you all from your hunting grounds in order to feed our hungry kits. There was an instant silence. On the other side of the clearing, Firepaw heard a River Clan apprentice start to mutter something, but he was quickly hushed by an elder. Satisfied that he had every cat's attention, Broken Star continued. Each year, the Two Legs spoil more of our territory. At least one clan must remain strong. If all the clans are to survive, Shadow Clan thrives while you all struggle. And there may come a time when you will need us to protect you. You doubt our strength? Hissed Tiger Claw. His pale eyes glared threateningly at the Shadow Clan leader, and his powerful shoulders rippled with tension. I do not ask for your answers now. Broken Star ignored the warrior's challenge. You must each go away and consider my words, but bear this in mind. Would you prefer to share your prey or be driven out and left homeless and starving? Warriors, elders, and apprentices looked at one another in disbelief. In the anxious pause that followed, Crooked Star stepped forward. I have already agreed to allow Shadow Clan some hunting rights in the river that runs through our territory, he meowed quietly, gazing down on his clan. Horror and humiliation rippled through the River Clan cats at their leader's words. We were not consulted, cried a grizzled silver tabby. I feel that this is best for our clans, for all the clans, Crooked Star explained, his voice heavy with resignation. There are plenty of fish in the river. It is better to share our prey than to spill blood fighting over it. And what of Thunder Clan? Small Ear croaked. Blue Star, have you too agreed to this outrageous demand? Blue Star unwaveringly met the old cat's gaze. I have made no agreement with Broken Star except that I shall discuss his proposal with my clan after the gathering. Well, at least that's something, muttered Greypaw in Firepaw's ear. We'll show them we're not as soft as that yellow-bellied River Clan. Broken Star spoke up again, his rasping voice sounding arrogant and strong after Crooked Star's surrender. I also bring news that is important to the safety of your kits. A Shadow Clan cat has turned rogue and spurned the warrior code. We chased her out of our camp, but we do not know where she is now. She looks a mangy old creature, but she has the bite like Tiger Clan. Firepaw's fur bristled. Could Broken Star possibly be talking about Yellowfang? He pricked up his ears, curious to hear more. She is dangerous, I warn you. Do not offer shelter to her. And, Broken Star paused dramatically, until she is caught and killed, I urge you to keep a close eye on your kids. Firepaw knew that the nervous growl that rumbled in the throats of the ThunderClan cats, that they too had thought of Yellowfang. The bold she-cat had done nothing to endear herself to the reluctant hosts. And Firepaw guessed it wouldn't take much to drum up hatred against her. Even the words of a despised enemy like Broken Star would be enough. The Shadow Clan warriors began to push their way out of the throng of cats. Broken Star leapt down from the rock, and his warriors immediately surrounded him and escorted him away from 4 trees back into Shadow Clan territory. The remaining Shadow Clan cats followed quickly behind, including the undersized tabby Lionheart had questioned earlier. But among the other Shadow Clan apprentices, the tabby no longer looked unusually small. They all looked tiny and undernourished, more like kits of 3 or 4 moons than full-fledged apprentices. What do you think of all that? Greypaw mewed in a low voice. Ravenpaw bounded over before Firepaw could reply. What's going to happen now? He wailed, his fur fluffed up in alarm and his eyes wider than ever. Firepaw didn't answer. The elders of ThunderClan were gathering nearby, and he was straining to hear what they were saying. That must be Yellowfang he was talking about, growled Smellier. Well, she did snap at Golden Flower's youngest kit the other day, murmured Speckled Tail darkly. She was the oldest nursery queen and fiercely protective of all the kits, and we've left her behind, with the camp virtually unguarded, wailed One Eye, who, for once, seemed to be having no trouble hearing anything. I tried to tell you she was a danger to us, hissed Darkstripe. Bluestar has to listen to Recent now and get rid of her before she harms any of our young. Tigerclaw strode up to the group. We must return to camp at once and deal with this rogue, he yelled. Firepaw didn't stop to hear more. His mind was spinning. Loyal as he was to his clan, he just couldn't believe that Yellowfang would be a danger to kits. Frightened for the old she-cat, burning with questions only she could answer, he raced away from Greypaw and Ravenpaw without a word. He charged up the hillside and pelted through the forest. He had been mistaken about Yellowfang. Had he been mistaken about Yellowfang? If he warned her about the danger she was in, would he be risking his own position in ThunderClan? What trouble he got himself into? He had to find out the truth from her before the other cats got back to camp. And I believe that is where we'll leave it for tonight. So, thank you for joining me. I hope you have a good evening, good night, and rest peacefully. Till next time, friends.